Um, would you state your name or your artist moniker or both?
I am DJ Magic Clowns, aka Seltzers.
Is there any meaning behind your moniker?
Sure. Do you want the origin story of DJ Magic Clowns?
Yeah, whatever you want to say.
Ah.
It's your time, you know?
This is a true story. I was walking with a friend of mine in Valley Stream, Long Island, and there was a sign up for a party store. One of those signs where you could change the letters. And on one line it just said DJ Magic Clowns. I assume they were trying to sell DJs, the services of a DJ, of a clown, of a magician.
Yes.
But I saw that and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's my DJ name. And then I became a clown.
And now, so you saw that before you were a clown.
Oh yeah.
And did that factor into your becoming a clown, or was that inevitable?
I think that the clown thing was inevitable. I would say, and when I say I would say, I think more other people said it to me when I announced to close friends that I was going to be a clown. They said, "Tell me something new."
Oh yeah. So they saw that one coming.
Right. I mean, and to be fair, I think, I think if I looked back to moments, sort of snapshots of my childhood that shaped me, I would say a good solid third of them took place on trips to the circus. Because growing up every year, I grew up in Brooklyn, so every year we would go to the Big Apple Circus, and I have vivid memory. Oh, thank you.
That wasn't totally altruistic. I want you to share that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so Brooklyn. I don't want to get too off track.
Sure.
But circus. So the clown was the major part of that, or were there other things you're interested?
Actually, probably initially juggling, and I enjoyed clowns, but I think juggling was probably the thing that grabbed me. Where I was like, oh. I want to do that. And
how? And so, when did you learn to juggle?
When I was 6. When I was 6, we went to the circus. I remember seeing the juggler and just thinking, that's rad. I could probably figure out how to do that. And so I locked myself in my room for a week with 3 tennis balls and figured it out.
Sweet. No instruction. You were just
No, so I started, in earnest juggling. After about a weekend, I got it. I started in earnest, practicing juggling.
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Practicing and whatnot. And it became abundantly clear pretty quickly that, tennis balls wasn't not the best move. And I don't know, I guess it was I need juggling balls. And my parents, I guess my parents did this, I don't know, I was little. They found that there was a juggle supply store not far from my house. And this guy who was a 1976 world champion juggler lived in this apartment and sold juggling equipment out of his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to his house, and it was wild because, literally, the room looked kind of this is sparse compared to his. When you walked in, it was
right.
Stacked, and he would, because he had low ceilings, he would sit cross-legged on the floor practicing his juggling.
Mm-hmm.
And so he, just in that, I think I walked in and we got some juggling balls and I stayed with him for an hour or two and he showed me a bunch of shit.
Yeah, right there, that's a lot.
Yeah. Aside from that, just every time I'd run into somebody who juggles, I'd be like, what can you teach me?
That's cool. So, were you playing music at all at that point, or?
Oh yeah, around the same time I started playing flute in public schools. And guess I took to it pretty quickly, because shortly after starting in school, I remember it was, actually I remember it was the first thing in school that made any sense to me, but my parents, saw, oh, he's good at that, so they sent me to, flute lessons. So, I was playing classical flute, juggling, growing up in Brooklyn.
Sounds nice.
Sure.
Yeah. So that seems to me kind of early to start, because I didn't start music in public school till I was in 4th grade, so I was 10.
It was second grade.
Second grade.
Second grade we started. Second grade actually was recorder, and then third grade was flute.
Yeah. We had that was that was similar. We didn't do flute. I think we did recorder.
I think if I remember my school, like one class, the whole class got flute, and then the other class that got music, it was like only 2 classes in the grade got music, because if you're only gifted and talented, they didn't care about everybody else.
Yeah.
So like one class got flute and one class got violin. I was in the flute class.
Thank God. Right?
I don't know. Is it? I love the violin. That's one of my favorite instruments. But
no, it's great. I was fucking around.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think the violin is a much more versatile instrument than the flute. And finds its way more comfortably. Like for me to, as a flute player, get down with a lot of the musics and musical worlds I've explored, I have to not play the silver flute I grew up being trained to play, but like other, different indigenous flutes or like simple system flutes and things like that, because that makes sense for that music. Mm-hmm. Whereas the violin, aside from like, maybe the tuning of the strings, with like open tunings, it's the same instrument.
Right.
So it kind of like maybe less of a hump to jump over if you want to reach out past classical music. Because
you're saying with the flute, you really can't break out of that like Western intonation or whatever.
You can, but meaning not many traditional musics adopted the silver flute from European classical music, whereas most traditional traditions or folk traditions of music have adapted the violin into their, so that it is a legitimate voice in the music rather than an appropriated voice in the music.
Okay.
Or an appropriation of the music to a different voice or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe appropriation is a hot word to use.
I mean,
I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean it in a, like, like, I play the Irish flute as well as the, classical flute, and it's, has a different tone, it has a different timbre. Yeah,
that's the root, that's my question is, could you achieve on a flute those sounds that the Irish flute, like the silver flute, could you achieve them, or is it really like, does it, so for example, being a trombone player, I see like you have this very flexible intonation,
right?
Although the timbre or whatever,
sure,
is like very, very specific, know, and with the violin, I guess you're totally tonally flexible, so you could play any type of But I don't know about the flute. Are you kind of locked into a certain thing?
Well, I mean, like a silver or a nickel silver flute tends to have a sharper tone, whereas a gold flute has a mellower tone. So there are ways, sure. I mean, and to be fair, I mean, if we're just talking like specifically Irish music, since I brought it up, that might be a little bit easier to do on a silver flute, but if you're trying to get into like Bolivian music, where it's a different tonal system, the timbre, the way that it, it's not just that it's not transverse flutes, but it's also fipple flutes, so that it has just a completely different feel. Everything, the scales are different, you know. So then, could you do it? Sure, I'm sure there are people who do, you know. But it definitely doesn't. You have to. Well, okay, for me, I think the focus onto a Western instrument, by the time I was exploring those musics, had already shifted to the upright bass, so that it was more interesting and exciting for me to explore those musics without the silver flute and like getting into, you know, different world flutes.
All right, cool, thank you. So I guess this question makes sense next. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born at Caledonia Hospital in the heart of Brooklyn. I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. That's it.
So this is going to be, yes. So do you think your approach to music is similar or different to most of the people, not including the people you actually play with, but the larger community?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that where you grew up impacted?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any kind of like short way of explaining how?
Sure. Okay, so growing up where, and I guess when, I grew up in Brooklyn, put it so that, you know, each neighborhood had crews within the neighborhood of, you know, crews of friends. And, you know, it was a very tribal upbringing in a way. You know, where you know, like it was sort of like within the neighborhood, each crew either got along or didn't. But at the end of the day, if there was like beef outside of your neighborhood, your neighborhood crews, whether you were friends or not, you had each other's back neighborhood-wise. It was like that growing up. And not only that, hanging out, like each crew had a park, you know, and like the different parks were like where that you hung out. And then there was like the core groups in the park, and then people who would just randomly show up, and like you knew them, and you know, for whatever reason they weren't there every day, you know. And that, I mean, in terms of Platypus Revenge, that's entirely how we have always run it, you know, from the get-go. When it started with me and Demi and Dave Moss, it was like, you know, okay, we're the core, the other people who will be coming and playing with us, you know, we're not going to hold them to, having to be obligated to be anywhere, you know, unless they tell us and we're expecting them, you know, and then they don't show. That's a different story. But, you know, it was always like, okay, we're going to do this thing, and it's more of a, if it's going to be a community, if it's going to be a collective, people have to be allowed to not show when they can't, because life brings you to different places. It's not like, you know, anybody's on a payroll that we can be like, oh, you said you were going to be here. What the heck? You know, and so, yeah, in that regard, it's always been like we have a crew, and it shifts, and growing up, it always shifted, you know, who was, you know, because it wasn't ever like, oh, everybody stuck to their age group. It was like the crews were all different ages, you know what I mean?
It had to do with proximity, not with...
Exactly.
With something other.
Right. It was just... Yeah.
So to bring this back... Sorry, I'm going to stop and start, because it has a 20-minute... We haven't hit 20 minutes or something, you know, it'll just end. So, okay, so bringing that back to the idea of your approach to music and how it fits in the larger community of New York. So
also, there's another piece of it, which is like growing up, my crew was entirely based around skateboarding. Like, we were the skaters in the neighborhood. And the park that we were, like, that was like our park, it was like, it had the best skate spots in the neighborhood. That's why we hung out there. You know, so in terms of, like, you know, okay, socially, that shaped how Platypus, at least my input in how we shaped Platypus, that's how I look at it. But in terms of my own personal choices as a musician, improvising, I think skateboarding probably more than, and the experience of like exploring the city with my friends on a skateboard, has more influence than, like, I look at my musical training as just giving me the ability to play my instrument, to the, you know, and have a way to practice to get better on the instrument. But in terms of like how to navigate music itself, I look more toward my experiences just in life, on adventures, going around. You know, you're skating with a crew of people down any city block. You know, you're going to have to avoid cars, and where you are versus where your friend is different, so the way you avoid the car is going to be different. But it's, you know, it's in symphony with each other. You know, if you pan out. And that's, you know, sort of, I always kind of looked at music and improvising as like finding my lines, very much how I find my lines on a skateboard.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it answers the question. I'm not going to bear down on it anymore. What is the band that you're playing in now?
The main band is Platypus Revenge.
Platypus Revenge, yeah. And any kind of explanation on the name Platypus Revenge?
Absolutely. Like I said, me, Demian Richardson, and Dave Moss started the band about just shy of 10 years ago. This June it'll be 10 years.
Nice.
And we had a session in our old studio, and let's see, we had a session, and like at the end of the session, we said, okay, well, are we going to do this? Or is this something we want to pursue as a band? So we said yes, let's do that. And moving forward, maybe 2 days go by, and I get a call from Moss, like, yo, Daniel Carter just hooked Demian up with a spot on WKCR, the radio station.
Yeah.
And, because basically, like, I think what happened, I'm pretty sure what happened was they were calling Daniel to get him on, and Daniel was like, no, Demian. So, at the time, Demian just said, I don't have any bands happening. I have nothing happening except this thing we just started 2 days ago. So, hey, do you guys want to play on the radio? So, maybe 4 days after our first session, we were playing on the radio. And we needed a band name. And so, in the conversation, I just get a message from Moss saying, Demi wants to know if you'd be cool with calling us Platypus, because, musically we want to be like, sort of like explore all different, like mixing and matching the different genres and ideas and styles and whatnot. Sort of like how a platypus is like a weird amalgamation of like things. I mean, it's the only mammal that lays eggs. It glows in the dark. It's venomous, but in its hand. It's like part beaver, part duck. It's a strange animal. Now, I was like, absolutely. It's funny, I don't know if I've ever actually told Demi this side, but when I was little, one of my obsessions, like, for a couple of years of my childhood was Australia, because of Crocodile Dundee. So I had a video about the wildlife of Australia that I used to watch almost daily as a child. And the whole video leads up to the platypus, the most mysterious and amazing creature of Australia. So I was like, yeah, I love the platypus. We get to the radio station, we perform, and we were interviewed, but they record ahead of time, so it didn't go out live. And then the day it was supposed to be aired, Charlie Hayden passed away, so then it was actually aired a couple weeks after that. But in that interim somewhere, we realized there was another band by the name of Platypus, like a prog rock band. And so to differentiate ourselves, we were like, we gotta do something. And somehow we added Revenge to it. I don't recall exactly what led to that as the second, but it seemed to flow from the tongue.
It makes sense. Right. Hearing the story makes sense. I feel like, okay, I get it. Yeah. So
Revenge
on the prog rock.
On the prog rock.
That's where my mind meant.
Sure.
Yeah.
The funny thing too is I think because in the early days of Demian and I getting to know each other musically, though him and I are in a similar way how I listen to a lot of music for no real rhyme or reason he has, and we both have very similar tastes in music. The first thing that we realized we both were really into was Yes, the band Yes. So actually, maybe I would say for 3 years, I don't think we did a Platypus session. Yeah, for 3 years without listening to Close to the Edge before we played.
Okay. So I see. So the prog rock kind of element or ties or relationship is more complex than just a shared initial name.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Demian. Actually, I think similar to me. We're both in. We both. It's not that we're into prog rock per se, but there are certain bands and certain music or albums or what have you that it's like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. It's amazing. We love that. Or or certain bands where I even, both of us, that's another thing that we both bonded on, is not only do we love the good Yes, we love the cheesy Yes too. Mm-hmm. Or Everybody Loves Miles. There's a slightly smaller sub group that likes Electric Miles, and then me and Demi and 80s Miles.
You're your own subgroup.
We're our own subgroup. There's maybe 5 other people that like Miles dressed like Michael Jackson doing Cindy Lauper tunes.
On Miami Vice.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen those episodes. Okay, so last question for this interview. Things seem to be heating up here, so I know you want to go play. Those guys are playing whatever. And is there a point to art or music? Yeah,
that's
I went 0 to 100. In one question, I know it's kind of like it's jumping right off the cliff.
Is there a point? If I were in a more darker place in my life, as I have been at various times, I would probably say no, it's all futile. And at times it feels that way. Mm-hmm. But I have to say yes. In fact, I would say it's... The point is the only point that is worth anything, to do anything, which is, why I make art is to try, for a few reasons. One, maybe to try to make the world more beautiful than you found it. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's kind of the fun thing about it. Also, the part that I think gets lost oftentimes, but is probably should be in my head of paramount importance, is like you become an artist to serve people around you in your community. We get caught up in calling it an audience and thinking that we're giving them a product and they're giving us money, or we hoping to get money, oftentimes or not, but that's another conversation. It's like, if you're truly there to serve, you're not thinking about what you're getting in return. You're just grateful to be there to serve. And that, I think, is more and more just, I don't know, not even lost. It's like looked down upon. But I kind of think to be of service to your fellow human being is the point of art.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Cheers to that. Nice.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was a great interview. Thank you.